Ramillies, 1706. The Battle of Ramillies was perhaps the Duke of Marlborough's most successful action. On this one occasion he was in sole command of the Anglo-Dutch army and earned the whole credit for both the victory and the subsequent conquest of the Spanish Netherlands. The year 1705 and the early months of 1706 were a period of deep frustration for the Duke. Allied overconfidence after his triumph at Blenheim had resulted in a breakdown of cooperation and an abortive campaign in Flanders in 1705, affording Louis XIV enough time to reorganize his disrupted forces. In consequence, Marshal Willer's offensive on the Rhine thwarted Marlborough's first plan for 1706, a march to North Italy in support of Prince Eugen. The Duke, however, soon adjusted his schemes to meet the new situation, and, abandoning his original intentions, marched from Liège in early May into enemy territory, hoping to lure Marshal Villeroy into accepting battle. Marlborough was not very confident that the battle-weary French would take up the challenge, but on this one occasion Louis XIV was equally determined that the battle should be fought so as to restore the prestige of the French army, and consequently goaded his commander in the Netherlands to seek out Monsieur Marlborough. Whilst the latter trailed his coat near the lines of Brabant, Villeroy suddenly advanced from Louvain and crossed the River Dyle. Reports of these moves caused a surprised and gratified Marlborough to concentrate his forces and march with all speed for the plain of Ramillies, where he intended to camp on the night of Whitsunday on 23rd May 1706. However, for once, the French forestalled the Allies, and Marlborough's advance party found the chosen site already occupied by Marshal Villeroy's 60,000 men. As soon as it was light on the 23rd, the Duke reconnoitred the French positions and decided to attack with his 62,000 troops as soon as they came up from Merdorp. Villeroy's army was deployed along a low ridge, two-thirds of which was protected by the marshes of Little Head, whilst the right flank was sheltered by the river Menin. A series of villages provided a line of useful strongpoints. Slightly advanced before the extreme right stood the hamlet of Franquenay, supported by the village of Tavier. The center of the line was formed around Ramillies and Offos, and the left flank pivoted on the village of Autre-Aiguille. On the open ground stretching between Tavier and Ramillies, Villeroy stationed 82 squadrons supported by infantry brigades. In many respects, the position bore a remarkable resemblance to the one occupied by the French at Blenheim. Marlborough's eagle eye, however, at once noted several important errors in the French dispositions. To cover the entire 4-mile ridge, Villeroy had been compelled to overextend his forces. Moreover, his front stretched in a long concave curve, which would delay movements from one flank to the other. The Allied army, on the other hand, was drawn up on a shorter front inside the two horns of the French crescent, and possessed an additional advantage in convenient fold in the ground, which would effectively conceal any Allied transfers from the right flank to the center. In addition, Villeroy had stationed 50 squadrons on his left flank, where the marshes of Little Head would inevitably obstruct their employment. Taking into account these errors, the Allied army's slightly superior numbers and far stronger artillery, the advantages of interior lines, and the invaluable area of that ground, Marlborough was in commanding position. At 1 o'clock the batteries went into action, and an hour later the Allied forces attacked both French flanks simultaneously. General Orkney launched a determined attack with the English infantry across the Little Head against Autre-Aiguille. This assault soon attracted Villeroy's attention. He was under specific instructions from Versailles to have particular attention to that part of the line which will endure the first shock of the English troops, and, accordingly, immediately transferred several units from his center to the threatened area. Meanwhile, on the other flank, the Dutch guards, assisted by 2 cannon, stormed the villages of Racnay and Taviers with such vigor that the French garrisons fled precipitately. To stabilize this sector, Villeroy was forced to draw still further on the infantry reserves on his right center. Thus, within an hour of the opening of the battle, Marlborough was already imposing his will upon his adversary, compelling him to weaken his center, to strengthen his flanks. Shortly after 3 in the afternoon, the crisis of the day took place. The French cavalry on the right charged Overkirk's 69 squadrons and almost routed them. This event constituted a dire threat to Marlborough's center, but was remedied by the Duke in person at the head of first 18 and then a further 21 squadrons, drawn from his center and right wing by way of the concealing reverse slope. During the bitter cavalry action that ensued, Marlborough had a narrow escape. General Orkney recorded: "Milord Marlborough was rid over, but got other squadrons to his aid, which he led up. Major Binkfield, holding his stirrup to give him assistance onto his horse, was shot by a cannon ball that passed through Marlborough's legs." In due course the French cavalry were severely repulsed, the Maison de Roye losing their silver kettle drums, and Negro drummer in the melee. Although Orkney was still making great progress on his side, Marlborough now knew that the battle would have to be won in the center, for the marshes on the right made it practically impossible to support Orkney's battalions with cavalry. Consequently, the Duke called off the assault, much to Orkney's indignant amazement. The village of Autre-Église was in our grip, but as I was going to take position, I had 10 aides-de-camp to me to come off, the last being the adjutant general himself. Under Cadogan's eye, the English infantry withdrew to its earlier position. Reaching the crest of the opposite ridge, half the battalions halted in full view of the foe, whilst, on Marlborough's order, the remainder disappeared from sight into the dead ground, turned to their left, and marched off to reinforce the coup de grace against the French center. To deceive the French command into believing that the whole of Orkney's force still faced Autre-Église, the color parties of these battalions were left just below the crest. At 5 in the evening, the great assault against Ramillies and Offus was launched. In desperation, after the final rout of the remnants of his cavalry near the Tombe de Ottomon, Villeroy tried to form a new line at right angles to his center, but his troops became inextricably involved with the tents and wagons of the camp area. A renewed attack all along the crumbling line finally shattered French resistance, and by 8 in the evening the pursuit was well under way. Before dawn the following morning, the fleeing remnants of Villeroy's army had been chased 15 miles towards Louvain, its cohesion shattered. The fruits of victory were most rewarding for the Grand Alliance. Town after town fell to the Allies during the ensuing weeks. Louvain, Brussels, Antwerp, Ghent, Bruges, Ostend, and Menin all opened their gates. 1706, indeed, proved a memorable year for the Allies, for besides the victory of Ramillies and the conquest of the Spanish Netherlands, Prince Eugen won the Battle of Turin in the North Italy and cleared the French from the Po Valley. Little wonder that contemporary observers forecast a speedy end to the war. But once again a combination of diplomatic bungling, overconfidence, and lack of Allied cooperation was to throw away the many advantages gained by Marlborough and his men at this great and glorious day at Ramillies.